The medical bay aboard the salvage vessel Nightingale hummed with the steady rhythm of life support systems. Thomas Webb knelt beside the examination table where his patient lay motionless, her silver blood pooling beneath torn scales that shimmered like crushed starlight. He had found her drifting in an escape pod 3 hours ago, half dead and wrapped in armor so advanced it made human technology look like stone tools. "Stay with me," Thomas muttered, reaching for the dermal regenerator. He had no idea what species she belonged to. Her body was humanoid, but covered in overlapping plates of iridescent scales. 4 arms, 2 legs, and a face that was both alien and somehow expressive in its agony. The translator chip in his ear picked up nothing when she occasionally whispered something delirious. Thomas had been a combat medic before he became a salvage operator. He knew trauma when he saw it, regardless of the species. 3 of her limbs were broken. Burns covered 30% of her body. Whatever fight she had survived should have killed her. He worked methodically, setting bones with splints designed for human anatomy, but adaptable enough to serve. The regenerator would only work on the surface wounds, but it was something. He cleaned the burns with antiseptic gel and wrapped them in synthetic bandages that would keep infection at bay. "You're one tough lady," he said softly. "Most people wouldn't have made it this far." Her eyes fluttered open. They were gold with vertical pupils, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made him freeze. For a moment, something passed between them, some recognition that transcended species. Then her eyes closed again, and she slipped back into unconsciousness. Thomas spent the next 2 days caring for her. His ship was 3 weeks from the nearest station, drifting through an empty sector where few vessels traveled. He had time. He changed her bandages, administered what painkillers he hoped would work on her physiology, and monitored her vital signs with equipment that struggled to make sense of her alien biology. On the 3rd day, she woke. Thomas was checking the navigation console when he heard movement behind him. He turned to find her sitting upright on the medical table, her golden eyes alert and focused. The bandages were still in place, but she moved with a precision that suggested the pain no longer controlled her. "Easy," Thomas said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You're safe here. I found you in an escape pod. Your injuries were severe." She looked at him for a long moment, then at her bandaged arms, then back at him. When she spoke, the translator finally caught the language and rendered it into something Thomas could understand. "You tended my wounds." "Of course." "You needed help. You did not know who I was." Thomas shrugged. "Does it matter? You were hurt. I'm a medic, or I used to be. Helping people is what I do." Something flickered across her alien features that might have been surprise. She touched one of the bandages carefully, testing the splint on her upper right arm. "This is crude work," she said. Thomas felt a flash of indignation. "Well, excuse me for not having alien-specific medical equipment on my salvage ship. I did the best I could what I had." "I did not mean offense," she said quickly. "I meant that it is simple, direct, effective. There is no elegance to it, no artistry. Just function." She met his eyes again. "It is honest work. Thanks, I think." She rose from the table, testing her weight on her legs. Thomas noticed she moved like a fighter, balanced and ready despite her injuries. The splints and bandages looked absurd on her, like chains on a predator. "I am called Varix," she said. "I owe you a debt, Thomas, and you don't owe me anything. Like I said, helping is what I do. You do not understand. Where I come from, debts are sacred. You saved my life when I was powerless. That is a debt that must be repaid." Thomas scratched his head. "Look, if you want to thank me, just tell me where you need to go. I can drop you at the next station. The next station is controlled by my enemies. They are the ones who put me in that escape pod. Ah, Thomas considered this. So you need to lay low for a while. I need to return to my fleet. But first, I must heal. She looked at him with those unnerving golden eyes. Will you allow me to remain aboard your vessel until we reach safe territory? Sure, not much else to do out here anyway. Over the following week, Thomas learned that Varix was a soldier. She spoke little of her past, but the way she moved, the way she assessed every space she entered, the way her eyes tracked threats that did not exist, all of it marked her as someone who had seen extensive combat. She was also surprisingly good company. Once the pain receded and her body began its remarkable healing process, she started helping around the ship. She had an engineer's mind and quickly understood the Nightingale systems. She optimized the power distribution, repaired a coolant leak Thomas had been ignoring for months, and even improved the efficiency of the recycling systems. You're pretty handy, Thomas observed one evening as they shared a meal. He ate synthesized protein bars while she consumed a paste made from his emergency rations mixed with mineral supplements. Where'd you learn all this? Necessity. A warrior who cannot maintain her equipment is a dead warrior. Warrior. So you're military. Something like that. Thomas did not push. Everyone in space had secrets. On the 10th day, they received a transmission. It was not directed at them specifically, but it was broadcast on all frequencies, impossible to ignore. Thomas played it through the ship's speakers. The message was simple. A bounty. 10 million credits for information leading to the capture of Varix Telmora, Empress of the Calith Union, Supreme Commander of the Stellar Legions, the Golden Death, the woman who had personally led the charge against the hegemony, invasion, and killed their warlord in single combat. Thomas stared at the holographic image that accompanied the bounty. It showed Varix in full ceremonial armor, surrounded by thousands of soldiers. Her 4 arms raised in victory. He turned slowly to look at his passenger, who sat calmly at the table, eating her paste. So, Thomas said carefully, Empress, huh? Yes, Supreme Commander. Also yes, the Golden Death. A title I earned in battle. Not one I chose. Thomas sat down heavily. You're the most powerful military leader in this entire sector of space. In several sectors, actually. And I've been treating you like a wounded stray. Varix tilted her head. You treated me like someone who needed help. There is no dishonor in that. Why didn't you tell me? Because it did not matter. When you found me, I was not an empress. I was a dying soldier. You saw someone in need, and you helped, expecting nothing in return. Do you know how rare that is? Thomas thought about the 10 million credit bounty. He thought about what that kind of money could do, how it could set him up for life. He thought about it for perhaps 3 seconds. So when you said your enemies controlled the next station, he said slowly, you meant the people who are trying to kill you are actively hunting you. Correct. There was a coup attempt. My own generals betrayed me during a peace negotiation. They believe me dead. She smiled, showing teeth that were far too sharp. They are mistaken, right? Thomas rubbed his face. Okay, new plan. Where's this fleet of yours? 3 weeks from here, in the Vadra system? But Thomas, if you take me there, you will be putting yourself at risk. The traitors have agents everywhere. Yeah, well, I didn't patch you up just to throw you to the wolves. Or whatever the space equivalent of wolves is. He stood and walked to the navigation console. Vadra system it is. Varix rose and followed him. The debt I owe you grows larger. Stop talking about debts. Friends help friends. That's all there is to it. She placed one of her hands on his shoulder. The gesture was awkward, unpracticed, as if she was not accustomed to casual physical contact. You consider me a friend. Why wouldn't I? I am the Golden Death. I have killed thousands in battle. I have ordered the destruction of entire fleets. I am feared across 100 worlds. Thomas met her golden eyes. Right now, you're the person who fixed my coolant leak and helped me reorganize the cargo bay. The rest is just job description. For the first time since he had known her, Varix laughed. It was a harsh sound, unpracticed, but genuine. You are either the bravest human I have ever met, or the most foolish. Probably both, Thomas admitted. They reached the Vadra system 22 days later. The moment they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they were surrounded by warships. Massive vessels bristling with weapons, each one large enough to swallow the Nightingale whole. Thomas felt his heart hammering as a dozen, targeting locks, painted his ship. Then Varix stepped forward and activated the communications array. She had removed the bandages days ago, her remarkable healing complete. And she stood in the tattered remains of her armor, like a queen surveying her domain. This is Varix Telmora, Empress of the Calith Union. Stand down. The response was immediate. The targeting locks disappeared. The warships shifted formation, creating a corridor. And then from every ship in the fleet, a single message echoed across all channels. All hail the Golden Death. Welcome home, Empress. Varix turned to Thomas. You have my eternal gratitude, Thomas Webb. Name your reward. Thomas shrugged. Maybe just send a few ships to escort me out of hostile territory? And if you've got any spare parts for a Mark 7 coolant system, that would be great. She stared at him. I offer you wealth, titles, land, and you ask for ship parts. And safe passage. Do.